morning.
How you doing?
All right.
Fantastic to hear. Good to see you.
You're not dancing as much as usual. It feels like you're just kind of moving you're doing a wash machine or something.
Yeah, exactly. Probably. Why don't we just start the show off with my lack of preparation? I realized I didn't have two things open that I needed for the event. So that was my lack of dancing today because I couldn't listen to the music. I was trying to get ready, get caught up.
All right.
Busy day today. Unlike your ability to change your travel for next week, it's odd. We both live in Southern California. You a little closer to Central California, and me down pretty close to the San Diego. And we're not used to the weather that's come to the East Coast. And you were supposed to be somewhere near Boston next week, and I'm headed to DC. And you were able to change yours, but the event I'm headed to with the National Association of Wholesalers at their yearly executive summit in DC is I guess they're saying the show must go on. So I'm leaving tomorrow now instead of Sunday.
Okay. Well, you get an extra day in DC to enjoy
do nothing.
Do nothing. Yeah.
I'm bringing, in fact, here's my,
this would be good. You're always saying you wanted some time to catch up. Now you have some time to.
I've got 2 flights tomorrow. And what's funny is I wasn't even planning this. I was going to do a LinkedIn post, but my buddy Brian Eason wrote this great book. It's called Foundations of a Giant, a Branch Boss's Blueprint for Wholesale Distribution. Seeing it here, I was going to start in on this weekend. I told him I would do it a few months ago, and I was planning a LinkedIn post, which I'll still do. But yeah, will be some flight reading. It's crazy. I get on planes, Tom, for years and years and years. And ever since there's been Wi-Fi on planes, I just get on a plane, and as soon as where I'm able, I just start grinding out work. And tomorrow's flights, I actually downloaded an old James Bond movie. I think it was Goldfinger to my iPad on Netflix, and I'm bringing a book, and I'm going to get a little bit done. But my hope is that Sunday I'll be right downtown DC. I am planning to get a great workout in and get a lot of work done. But I'm also hoping there's a break in this storm, and I can get out for a little walk and enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll bring your snowshoes. So
yeah, it's I think they're talking about the ice storms and the it should be an interesting week to be gone.
Yeah.
But everybody else is in the same boat. I was talking to some folks from NAW yesterday, and they said that a large chunk of people are coming in a day early now because the event starts on Monday. So anyways, it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Pretty exciting lineup of speakers. Really cool black tie dinner at the Library of Congress, which of all the times I've ever been to DC, I've never been to the Library of Congress. And so that should be interesting. Yep. Besides getting to wear a penguin suit.
Yeah. All right. We'll take pictures.
Very, very good. Very good. And you snuck out of needing to travel this week. So good for you.
I got out of it. So
yeah, they can't do your session you're able to do by Zoom. They can't do the conference I'm headed to on Zoom. So
yeah. But we have kind of an express version today of Around the Horn because we need to be done by a little after 10, I guess. So let's do it. Let's get into it.
All right. Where do you want to start? Well, let me do this. Let me do a quick intro. I'm Kevin Brown, Tom Burton. Now that you know about our travel schedule, the weather, and everything else, you may still be wondering why you're here, and I'll tell you about that really quick. We get together every Friday, and we talk about the news of the week from mostly North America, but a lot of global news as well. In fact, as a side note, Tom, today I noticed just on the LinkedIn audience that we have, it's usually 3 to 5x the number of people that have clicked the attending button is what we get from LinkedIn. But interestingly, we had people from Italy, the Netherlands, I think Turkey, Belgium, Brazil, and did I say India? I think India as well. So broad audience just through the LinkedIn audience. And we usually hit 5 to 7 countries at least on the Apple and Spotify and other podcast platforms each week. But yeah, I was excited to have a broad audience today with us live, which is great in different time zones. But and then, by the way, our Canadian and Mexican friends, and I just call them our neighbors, so that are with us each week. But it's good to have those folks with us. But we get together every week. We talk about the news of the week, and we try and apply that what we see in the news related to the economy and supply chain and M&A and human resource things and leadership and stuff, and apply them back to wholesale distribution, how they relate to the companies that Tom and I work with every day, and the work that we do at the company that we work for, which is Lead Smart Technologies, that sponsors our show. And we work solely with wholesale distributors and manufacturers. We don't work with other companies. And what we've developed at Lead Smart is what we define as an AI-enabled customer intelligence and CRM or smart CRM platform. And what we like to do with that is take the siloed data that companies have around their organization, whether it's ERP data, the marketing automation data, e-commerce, and other types of data that they have in their organization that sit in silos right now that don't bring them value by being in those silos. And we bring that together in a unified data integration platform. We bring that together, and we can use different technology tools as well as artificial intelligence to gain deep insights into what's happening at the customer, with your team, and with your overall business. So if your company is in the process of digitally transforming, would like to understand your customers better, your teams better, and your overall business, and truly accelerate revenue growth, then we would love to talk to you. So we couldn't do it without the sponsorship of our show, or of the sponsorship by Lead Smart of our show. I'm stumbling here. So we're appreciative of that, and the people behind the scenes like Lily and John that help us get this show out each week. So anyways, that is what we do. We do this through the use of our newsletter that Tom's going to bring up momentarily here. The newsletter is called Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing, just like the show. If you don't get that newsletter and you would like to, just pop us a note at hello@leadsmarttech.com. You can certainly look the show up on LinkedIn, or look up Lead Smart on LinkedIn, and you'll see an opportunity to subscribe to the newsletter there. Or you could go to the website for the show, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com, and sign up there as well. So we appreciate you being with us. Tom, you want to take us away on economy and supply chain in our first segment today?
Yeah, I mean, we have what, like 8 articles here in this economy and supply chain, which
Right.
we're not obviously.
I think it was more like 5, but you can exaggerate if you want.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
Okay.
So
that's not 8.
Okay, well, almost 8. Closer to 6 than it is to 8 than it is to 3.
Yeah.
But and I'm interested. The takeaway as I was reading all of these articles is that, I don't know. You're a sailor, right? What is it when it's like the doldrums? Like you kind of just aren't going anywhere. There's no wind, kind of pushing one thing or another, and everyone's kind of sitting here waiting to see, are we going to have a nice wind, or are we going to end up in a hurricane, or what's going to actually take place here? And
good description of the doldrums. Yeah.
Doldrums,
nothing. The toughest in yacht racing. Nothing harder to sail in than light wind if you're racing.
So you just kind of like float around, right? You just kind of sit it and then hope for you're getting it to get some wind, but you don't want too much wind.
Yeah. Yep.
That point. And if you look at this one article here, the U.S. CEOs see uncertainty as a top economic concern for 2026. I think that kind of, again, if you just look at this, there's no clear direction that we're seeing on anything, right? Inflation seems to be pretty stagnant. Growth seems to be, at least in manufacturing and other, things that imports, all these things here, they're all kind of just sort of stagnant. But I think people are waiting for, well, what's coming and what is going to be the severity of what's coming.
Yeah. I think, we can talk about what some of those articles you're referencing. So there's an article there about, maybe if you hit to the top there, right? CNBC has a good article about Fed's main gauge shows inflation at 2.8% in November. Follow-up article from Distribution Strategy Group was actually, this article is quite good. DSG and our good friends there, Ian and Jonathan and their team, they've really started tackling some bigger topics that are, highlighted in the news right now outside of just distribution and then tying them back like we try and do here with the show. This one is U.S. manufacturing trade sales rose about 66 billion from a year earlier. And then the one you just referenced about this was from HR Dive that U.S. CEOs say uncertainty is the top economic concern. And I think uncertainty ties to that. You use the doldrums thing, right? You're kind of bobbing around in the ocean waiting for something to happen and what's next. And, is an orca going to hit the side of my boat, or is the wind going to start, or am I going to sit here, bobbing around or not? And that's in reality, I think, Tom, that's what we've seen for, about a year, probably more than a year now, is that we're just kind of stuck in this vacillating with I always call it as simmering. It's not boiling and it's not cold. We're just kind of, there's ups and downs to it all.
Yeah. And no clear direction as to, are we going to hit a storm, or are we going to just continue to stay in the doldrums, as you said?
Well, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it ties to, it's interesting. I'm much more of a student of history, the economy, and unfortunately politics, which I'm not crazy about, and the news in general, since we started doing this show 3+ years ago. And as I learn more and dive deeper into some of these things, you've heard me talk over and over again, and the policies and the way we look at economic factors in the U.S., I believe could use some adjustments in how we're really analyzing things. But we could be, and again, I'm a manufacturing and distribution guy for the last 30+ years, who became a technology guy to go try and solve some industry problems along with you with your technology background, but certainly not an economist, certainly not a historian or a political scientist. But I have this feeling, I struggle to even say it out loud to an audience. We could be, with the U.S. economy, we could be at a very, very historic time of either great challenges or huge prosperity. I think a lot of what this administration is looking at right now, I don't want to say hero or zero, but when you start looking at, the narrow path they're going, I was listening to CNBC a little bit this morning, and they kept using the term related to the president's view of how to keep the economy moving as keeping it really hot, right? Well, then you start testing kind of the boundaries of some of the economic principles of what is inflation supposed to be at, how does that balance out with interest rates? And the president is saying, look, I mention this all the time. He may have more than the things I talk about, but president right now and the administration is focused on closing the borders, stopping the drug flow, balance. The more important ones to our discussion right now are balanced trade, right? And after that is lowering interest rates and onshoring or bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Now, he's also willing to push some pretty major boundaries to get those things, get those things to happen. If done correctly, we could see a major, major boom to the economy. There could also be some going off, I don't want to say going off a cliff, but hitting some guardrails pretty hard if things don't pull together correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point, right? Is there's the uncertainty, going back to the uncertainty is, hey, are we going to be in a kick-ass economic environment with the growth and thing that is possible, or are we going to end up in a situation, in a recession or other situation potentially worse than that I think everyone's kind of sitting around wondering about, hence the point about the uncertainty. Hey, before we leave here, do you want a quick update on some of the, what I found out about some of the Supreme Court and the tariffs?
No.
Speaking of things that are there?
No.
Don't want to know anything about?
No, I do, but can we pause on that for a second?
Yeah.
I wanted to get your thoughts, but too, the funny thing about tariffs is I was buying my version of coffee yesterday or the day before at the gas station at the bottom of the hill. My version of coffee is a Diet Coke in the morning, and much to my wife's chagrin. But I commented about the ongoing price increases, and the guy behind the counter goes, "Trump tariffs," grumbling, and I'm like, I don't think there's a tariff impact to this Diet Coke here. And he kind of laughed.
You look at the bottle and make sure it wasn't made in China.
Yeah, exactly right. It doesn't say, and it wasn't a glass bottle of of Mexican Coke, right? And but he kind of giggled with it a little bit, and an older gentleman there, and it was kind of funny. And so I commented to him. I said, "You don't like tariffs?" And he's like, I don't really know." And I said, "I like tariffs." And he looked at me all anxious, and like we were going to get into an argument or something. And I just told him, I said, "I think tariffs can be very good. I just think how the president talks about them aren't so good. But the idea behind them of balancing trade, right, and having the same deal across the board that we have, that other countries have with us, that makes a lot of sense." Right. But it was funny because the guy was like, "Oh my word, am I in trouble?" So
You're having this with a gas station guy.
yes. Well,
Right.
I wanted to debate with my equal. So
All right. Yeah, I guess so. You found parity.
yeah. But anyways, I do think it's interesting about that, and it just makes me think. I was having lunch with my good friend Darren Rawson the other day, and Darren's probably close to 30 years, if not 30 years now. In fact, he is of distribution executive veteran, and he was in town, and we met up for lunch the other day. And I was recommending to him, because we were talking about tariffs, and I was recommending him that same podcast that we listened to, the All In podcast, where the one of the hosts there, Chamath, was interviewing Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce. And if you are interested or paying close attention to what's going on with tariffs, which most of our audience here is, I think it's a great episode. In fact, it'd almost be fun, Tom, for us to go recap some of that, and maybe even a secondary side show and talk a little bit deeper about tariffs. Because what he was talking about how the sausage was made and the whole process. I think we talked a little bit about this last week on the show, but it was just very valuable to see the thinking behind it, of getting balanced trade, getting, he kind of used, without saying the words, we're kind of saying that at some level the U.S. has been a little bit of a whipping boy, for other parts of the world, and taking advantage of things. We're just trying to make things balanced and equal now. So the methodology of getting there and the rhetoric that goes with it is not necessarily always the best. So now that we're talking about that from a tariffs, go ahead and share with us your deep research.
Well, we were potentially expecting a verdict, if you want to call it that, earlier in the month. Didn't happen. There was another potential opportunity for a verdict on January 20th, a couple of days ago. Didn't happen. Now the Supreme Court is in recess, and I guess the earliest they reconvene is February 20th. So it's another month away.
Do you think, before you go on, do you think that people were really expecting a ruling, or was it just that there was an opportunity for a ruling because
I don't think they were expecting one on the 20th. I think they were earlier in the month. There was a lot of expectation.
Yeah, because it was just a regular scheduled date that they make announcements, right?
Understood. But I don't know that there was any big expectation. That was just a potential possibility. But earlier in the month, if you remember, I think it was the day of our show, or the day before of our kickoff show.
Right, correct.
Well, we were like, there was all this chatter about the Supreme Court was going to have the ruling, and that didn't occur.
Right.
So anyway, the point being is, it's minimally at the earliest, right? It could happen in February. And what was interesting, as I kind of continue to dig into this a bit more, which makes sense, is the Supreme Court is actually historically very cognizant of the impact that they make. And when things start to drag out, and they don't like to, if at all possible, upset the quote unquote status quo. So as tariffs continue to drag on and continue to go, it becomes more of the status quo, right? Companies adapt, we work things out, we figure out how to deal with them, right? So every month that goes by, it becomes the new normal, basically. And so what the quote unquote experts, if you want to call it this, but I think there's some logic to this.
You mean there's experts out there besides us?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Oh,
yeah, I guess one or two, maybe.
Yeah.
At least they call themselves that. Yeah.
Charlatans.
So the point is that as it drags out, right, the status quo becomes, or the new normal becomes more entrenched. And so what a lot of the experts are saying is, as this drags out, the likelihood of a major, shutdown of, okay, the tariffs are illegal, you got to stop them immediately, you got to refund money, all of these sort of edge case maybe scenarios are not likely. And what's the most likely at this point, as it drags on, is for them to say the current tariffs are in fact legal and you can continue, but we are going to limit the executive authority to do this again in the future. And there's going to be some changes onto how the executive authority. So, kind of a hand slap. Hey, you shouldn't have done that, but we're not going to mess with it because it's entrenched, but we're going to make some changes so that maybe this doesn't happen again. And there's obviously other variants of that, but that I found that really interesting because it is dragging out. They said the reason that it tends to drag out too is there's not clear agreement. And as there's not clear agreement on things, then
on the court, there's not a okay.
It's not simple. It's not a simple agreement. So therefore, you tend to end up getting more compromises, right, in order to get to a ruling that is there. So anyway, I thought that was interesting data. Obviously, that's not necessarily, it could play out completely the extreme, but the longer it drags out, the least likely it is, because the Supreme Court is cognizant of throwing hand grenades into things that are, again, kind of more of the status quo.
So as you were doing that research, did you come up with anything discussing the value of, I would say the value, but the impact of how the courts weighted conservative versus more liberal?
You mean who was in favor and who wasn't? Or
Yeah, not necessarily who, but just, and obviously you hear about it from a political standpoint constantly, right? That says, hey, how is the court stacked, so to speak, right? And you got a big percentage of this Supreme Court that were how many people did Trump get through in his, I think 3 in his first term, roughly. And you had some conservatives there already. So, I was just interested in the impact that was discussed there.
It didn't really get into that part of it as far as the pieces there, other than the fact that traditionally when things tend to drag on, it's because there's not clear consensus and the issue at hand is not is complex, right? There's a lot of complexities, which obviously there is here with all of this. But again, there's a lot of historical reference of if they're going to make radical changes or radical things, tends to happen quickly, not when things evolve and continue to evolve over time.
So was this having ChatGPT do long, deep research, or how did you go about this?
Yeah, just kind of digging around and looking at some different things that were there. Yeah,
that's great. I assume that the sources were pretty valuable that you saw from that too, with news sources and so forth. I think it's interesting. So you had some pretty strong opinions on this in the last few months about what was going to come out of this. What are your thoughts about what will really come out of it now?
My opinion was that if it was ruled illegal, right, that there would be, we saw this even with the Costco thing and all that there was going to be a run for refunds, right? People are going to be demanding refunds.
I asked them my Costco the other day and they said I could have an extra box for my
They
stuff.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, they did. Well, they
just
probably
an extra box.
Yeah. Well, if it was made in China, that's why the prices are so high. But again, they said they will likely rule again, in this research, it said when they do rule, if they do strike the tariffs down, they will make a clear statement regarding the refunds one way or the other, right? So my point was, if it was ruled down, people aren't just going to sit here and go, oh, well, right, and so forth. I didn't have really a clear opinion.
I thought we made a bet about it.
No, we were talking about refunds. We weren't talking about whether they ruled yay or nay. So anyway, things just keep dragging out. There will be some ruling of some sort, the degree and depth of it. But I think as it continues to drag out, the chances of there being a major shift becomes less and less probable.
Well, we've got some sessions at the NEW event I'll be at next week talking about that. We've got Brian Wild, their legislative analyst, will be there as well. He was on stage about 2 hours at the Industrial Supply Association's event last spring, about 2 hours before Liberation Day announcements happened. And so I'm sure I'll get a chance to talk to Brian one-on-one, and as I typically do at those events. And then he's got a couple of sessions that he's talking at. So we'll kind of see what comes out of that. So just to recap before we move on here, when is the next potential announcement from the Supreme Court?
They don't even reconvene until February 20th.
I want that job.
Yeah. I don't know how it all works. I don't know, obviously.
I'm just because they're not in session doesn't mean they're not working. Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Okay,
something I'd like to learn more about. Is I don't really know a lot about how that all plays out and all works. So, anyways, well, good deeper research. So we'll see what plays out of this. So in recap of that, every day that goes by, the likelihood is that they will not rule against the Trump administration's or the current administration's use of the Emergency Powers Act for tariffs.
For the current tariffs.
And basically say, okay, moving forward, everything that you want to do, you need to use one of these 3 or 4 other statutes that you have available to yourself.
Or get congressional approval.
Well, some of those require congressional approval.
Right. So what they may say is that in going forward, the executive authority that you used is going to be more limited. Right. Yeah. So, and he's been using it very liberally, right? I mean, every time something comes up, it's another tariff here and another.
And that's where my concern with it lies. It's funny. I thought about this quite a bit this week. In the People's Republic of California that we both live in, the idea it's really, you could almost, and this is kind of interesting. You look at the governor of this state is already running for president, for the last couple of years without saying he's running for president, just in his, desire to do battle with the current administration and tout himself and how strong he is and so forth. And, it is kind of interesting. If you look at California as the 4th largest economy in the world, I guess the leader of the 4th largest economy in the world thinks he can push back on the leader of the largest economy in the world a little bit. But if you look at, and this is an interesting, and talk about digressing here, but we'll go fairly quick on this. But California has a tax, a potential one-time tax, looking like it may get on the ballot initiative for November, that should, in theory, have zero impact on people like us who live in California, as they call it, the billionaire tax, right? And so what California is looking to do to be able to fund the budget deficit and the California Public Employee Retirement System, which is one of the largest investors of any dollars in the entire country, probably one of the most powerhouse investing groups in the world, is CalPERS. They are running a deficit right now on their returns right now based upon funding. They're at risk of
their obligations. They're
at risk of the obligation. Right,
over $1 trillion what they have available.
Right, and so with that at play, now there's this discussion of this billionaires tax, right? And to me, it seems really interesting because it almost applies. And I'm interested in your thought on this, or anybody else's comments. It almost applies similarly about Trump coming back, or the current administration coming back and saying, hey, we're adding some more tariffs on top of tariffs, right? Because what the billionaires tax is saying is, you've already paid taxes on this money, right? But now we want more of this money.
Yeah. The slippery slope with the billionaire tax is the fact that they're basically taxing assets, not taxing income.
Correct.
Right. Those are two different things. And they're basically potentially seizing asset, meaning seizing some of the money that you
unrealized. It could be unrealized financial gains, right?
Right. Or realized or unrealized. Yes.
Yeah. So, but the point with that, and the point with that is tying to it is, where does it end? Right.
It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope.
And that's why I was comparing these two things, right? Because it's like, we start with, and this is the issue of the precedent this could be, right? Well, we start with a billionaire tax. Well, how at what point does that go down to small businesses or people with, assets over $1 million or whatever? It's like, once you set that precedent that you can say, I've already taxed you on something, and now I want to come back and change it because I have a different financial need. I was just kind of relating that to the idea of what the current administration is doing today of saying, well, we've set a tax, but now because I don't like what you're doing related to Iran or Greenland or whatever it might be, is I'm going to apply more taxes. There's got to be a place that it's like, okay, you can't use this punitively over and over and over again on the same people.
Which is likely going to be included in that ruling that we just talked about, right, going forward. Right now, it's kind of a free for all. You can use that gun whenever you choose to, but I think that's what's probably going to get a little bit more muted.
Good. Why don't we get out of this economy discussion? Anything in our manufacturing distribution segment that caught your eye?
So there's this second article here from Electrical Trends, talking about
friend David Gordon.
Yeah. And, they're basically saying an unfortunate trend with the electrical distribution market is gross margins either stay flat or have been eroded. To me, that also comes back to my favorite conversation of organic revenue and organic growth.
That interests you?
Pardon?
That interests you? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, well, if you'd listen better, you'd hear these things.
Now you're starting to sound like my wife.
Yeah, well. So anyway, if you think about it, right, and this is stuff that we work on every day with our customers, is how to spot opportunities for organic growth. And one of those things obviously is identifying products that have potentially higher margins, but also think if you're a member of a buying group or whatever, and trying to leverage products to get rebates and things like that, right? There are multiple ways potentially to identify hidden margin in the organization. And one of the things that they were saying here is a price increase occurs for a manufacturer, and then, they don't bother to raise their prices or even look at their pricing for a period of time, which means nobody's really even looking at the margin opportunity there. So it's kind of the negative of organic growth. But anyway, I just think there's always this, again, this is where AI shines, and we're seeing this every day in the work that we're doing, is identifying those places where there's hidden margin and what is the term of the call? I guess they untrapped potential or
trapped potential.
Yeah. How do we untrap the trapped potential? And I think there's a lot of
trap. Can you say that 5 times fast? Untrap the trapped potential.
Untrapping trapped potential. Yeah. Including in margin is a part of that, right? It's not just revenue, it's margin.
Yeah. Well, and I thought David's article was good too, because it talks about, it says, where is it hiding? And he talks about cross-functional price and cost processes. And one of the things that goes with that, I think, is just where do you have, and I didn't read that article close enough to know if he addresses this, but, so often, salespeople have really, really broad capabilities of how they price things to customers, and having disciplines and not only in prices that you're paying your vendors, but in prices that you're selling for. And there's great software products out there that can help you put that into your ERP system and put parameters in place. But, the old override button can cause a lot of damage to that as well. But to your point about organic growth is, I was same company we were on the call with yesterday and talking about this. We talked about with their chief revenue officer, who's a very large electrical distributor, talking with their chief revenue officer a while back in a separate conversation. I was commenting that, when I was a manufacturer's rep and I would, go, seems like 100 years ago that was the case, but I guess what it would have been 22, almost 23 years ago, that I'd go do a end user visit with one of our distributors' salespeople to help them, coach them a little bit. And the vast majority of the time, we walked by more available business in a facility than they actually had, right? And so when you can start doing that, that's what that trap potential is what is it that we have stocked in our warehouse that company buys that we've not talked to them about, that they might not even know we sell, right? And when we start working on that trap potential, as we say, component of that, life changes pretty dramatically.
Yeah. And then again, you're talking about revenue or additional sales, but there's also that same trap potential and looking where margin is hiding as well.
Well, and to continue with that thought, right, is if you think about it, is if you get as close as you can to selling full line, and you're never going to sell everything to every customer, or rarely if you ever did, but if you can go from selling, you know, 3 categories of the 20 categories that your company's focused on to selling 7 categories, you're likely going to boost your margin, because usually people get in the door by having a better price on something because they were willing to sell at a lower margin to get into the facility. So now when you start looking at an overall blended margin of what you're doing at a customer, now the more product categories you sell, and the smart person goes in and tries to expand his business with higher margin categories. I mean, for some people, what I'm saying here is, they think through this every day. Other people I still talk to all the time, that this isn't even something they're thinking about in their business. So good. Good. Why don't we jump ahead into our, by the way, before we do that, Tom, there's a good article. We talked a lot last year about Do It Best and True Value, and the challenges that it kind of hit with True Value there, and the bringing together of those two companies under Do It Best. So there's a whole article here about that integration and how it's going. That's from hbsdealer.com. So good article there as
Very
well.
well. Sounds like they're ahead of pace of
Yep.
where they were expecting to be.
Yep. Good. So e-commerce and marketing. What are you seeing there that you'd like to talk about?
Oh boy. I mean, there's a few different articles here that are, I guess, similar in nature. And they all tend to revolve around this fun topic of agents, AI agents, and AI agents used for shopping and buying and so forth. Is there any one of these that you would like to focus on?
It's kind of one. I think we could kind of tie them together. This one from marketingprofs.com about automation versus authenticity, that I think plays in a lot. I mean, I think so many of us right now are looking at using some of these AI tools to help us with content development and things like that. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Was I talking to about it? And we were talking about, the help that it can really be of writer's block. And for me, what do they call it? There's a white paper syndrome or something like that, right? Where sometimes you just need that, no pun intended here, prompt to get you to really get thinking about things. But there's that risk that goes between finding this balance between, I'm just pumping up about a bunch of, inauthentic, is that a word? Inauthentic or content that's lacking authenticity, and that we're all starting to get a good AI sniffer going of what we read, and so I think there was a good discussion about the balance between those things.
Well, if you ask it, I think the key is that when you prompt it for that inspiration, you have to be, maybe careful is not the right word, but complete, and don't tell it to go ahead and write the whole thing for you. It will, right? And then all of a sudden you'll end up with 500 words of something, and then it just becomes real easy. Oh, well, I've got it here, right? And if you prompt it and you say, don't write it for me, but, ask me some questions, or give me some, 4 or 5 bullet points for an outline, or whatever, be more specific on what it is. I think it's a great tool for, you said, to kind of get past that white page or white paper block. But I think what ends up happening is it becomes so easy if you prompt it incorrectly, where it gives you the 500-word article, and you look at it and somebody looks at it and goes, oh, that looks pretty good, even without reading it carefully. And then it becomes just something that is an easy way out, right? Rather than using it as a catalyst, it becomes the complete outcome.
Well, and there's the risk that goes with it of it being wrong and hallucinating as well, right? It uses the article about Deloitte had to refund almost $300,000 after using AI in a research report that it was being paid for by the Australian government that had hallucinations all over it, right?
Yeah.
And then Air Canada had a chat bot that in 2024, the AI powered chat bot invented a refund policy for a individual customer. and the airline tried to get out of it. Says, no, that's not our policy. And the judge said, tough,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's your chat bot, right?
Right.
You said it, and it had invented something. And then it talks about when Google's Bard launched in a promotional app, it said Google's own AI chatbot provided incorrect information about space exploration, resulting in a market value loss of more than $100 billion. Now, think about that for a moment, right? You or I or whoever else might have a little hiccup and somebody laughs at us, but look at the market cap. Now, I'm sure, that $100 billion is now surpassed with another 300 billion the other direction. But it's something that people need to be paying attention to, and paying attention to it as leaders in organizations of what's going on and what's the output from our company, because that can reflect on an organization's brand as well.
And that then is why you're getting a lot of chatter around what is an agent or agentic AI versus just the conversational AI that you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Because if you really, I'm not saying this is easy, and I'm not saying that it's not as easy as just having a conversation and getting the data out. But what a good agentic strategy would do is you would have an agent to outline your material. You would then pass that off to another agent to write that material. You would have another agent to review it for authenticity and correctness, and then possibly another agent that looks at it related to your brand or voice or whatever the case. I mean, there could be multiple checks and balances along the way before something comes out the other end of what you would want to use. And that's again where I think the world of, you keep hearing all these things about agent, agentic web, and all of that. It's like an agent basically has some outcome, but that outcome can be passed to another agent, which then has a different objective and a different outcome along the way.
You're working on these with our team, developing agents day in and day out, but I know you're also using some different ones and looking at different things different ways and researching more than I am. But it just came to my mind, it almost seems like you could put, in the fact check, in maybe in multiple spaces of that path you just described, where you had agents that were highly critical, and then others that were maybe one that's highly critical and one that's maybe a little more lenient, have them both come up with an answer, and then have an agent that's trained on your true view and your company's position. And maybe those are separate agents, right? That then take another look at it before you get an output.
Sure. I mean, traditionally, right, think of the, even journalism and things like that, right? Traditionally, somebody would write it, you have an editor, you have different, people along the way, checks and balances, all of that stuff before something ends up in a production release.
Right.
It's just the same thing, but how do you automate that? And you could potentially have, you could have all kinds of different fact-checking agents and all of those things. Is there still guarantee of perfection? No, but is the chance or the probability of something being actually valuable, as well as eliminating hallucinations and inaccuracies, is much higher.
Yep.
Right. But it's very hard to do that when you just do the conversational, hey, give me a 500-word blog post, and it comes out with a 500-word blog post, and you're like, oh, that looks pretty good. And then that's, ends up on a website somewhere.
So I'm just kind of trying to take this back to our audience, to manufacturers and distributors, typically here is, and I'm wondering if maybe Microsoft's thinking about taking Copilot this way, and Google is looking at it from Gemini. Is, in theory, you could then have company agents that are tied to the Microsoft Word licenses that you have for the whole company, and or tied into your email programs, so that emails are looked at before they get the sent button is pushed. That's make sure something is staying on brand, and or there's not hallucinations in what they're doing, or misstatements that could cause the company problems.
Sure. Yeah.
Trying to think through the logistics of that.
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to add an agent that reviews the email or reviews something before it goes and sends it through.
Yeah, I guess if you were to look at it with it would, like, if you're thinking about it with Copilot, which is, I mean, my experience with it is pretty horrible so far, but is in theory that could be, Copilot could be programmed to say, don't let something leave, right? Even after someone hits the send button, don't let it leave if it is missing these parameters or violates any of these things based upon the company.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think this all ties into like this next article here, right? There's a couple articles here. Marketing actually, I'll go down to this last one here. Marketing to machines, a new funnel for an AI-driven buyer.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about this last week. This came up. Is, again, the traditional B2B buying process is Google something, go to multiple websites, check things out, look over here, look at a review, whatever the case may be, right? A lot of breadcrumbs along the way. And what these articles, again, the one last week and this one is talking about, is that AI agents doing the research for you, right? And doing the homework for you, finding the pricing, doing these things. I think it was on the Gartner one.
Well, that's the next. Yeah, that's the next article coming up, right?
There was a survey done. People were saying that, hey, I would trust agents to purchase up to $50,000 transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I don't know anybody doing that just yet, but I could see where that could get there, because an agent or a collection of agents could do, I think, a really good, thorough job of evaluating a situation or a purchase or whatever, more so maybe than a person. You eliminate the bias, you eliminate a lot of the other things that are there, but it completely changes the breadcrumb approach that we tend to use and build our marketing and sales actions around.
Yeah, I mean, the reality, I mean, when we've been talking about this here on our show for a long time now, is the idea that, we're going to be in a place where our agents are talking to our agents, right? I think it'd be interesting to look back at last year's transcripts and think of when did we talk about it first, and it might have even been, probably was 2024. But thinking about that idea, right, is that, hey, I'm going on a trip. My trip this week, a great example, right, would be, I'm planning on meeting, with a friend of our company, and Jamil Francis from Core Technologies. We were planning to get together on a Wednesday in DC before I fly out Thursday morning, and my trip's changed, so I'm going in tomorrow. Right? I could have very easily just spoke to an agent that says, change my trip, get me on a flight on Saturday, getting in on Saturday night rather than Sunday, change at the same, and that agent should then know that it also needs to change my hotel. And then I could quickly tell it to, oh, by the way, go talk to Jamil's agent and see if Jamil's available Saturday night for dinner or Sunday night for dinner instead of Wednesday, right? And all those could be agents talking to each other, your agents talking to my agents, so that when we do finally talk, we're not talking about logistics, or we're not talking about this or that or whatever it might be. Right? My agent could say, make sure that the restaurant's agent knows to bring Tom the check.
Sure, of course.
Right.
Yeah, that should be in every agent, I think.
That's a great use case. I'm going to work on that one. Good. Yeah. Well, I think that Gartner study that is there is pretty valuable. Let's jump ahead. We don't have a lot of time left today because we're ending a little bit early, but technology and cybersecurity. There's a good article here from Distribution Strategy again about exposed credentials threaten supply chains. Let's hit that just for a moment. There's a few things to talk about there. Do you have any particular thoughts from that one, Tom?
No, I thought it was really good, actually. And what they're saying is that, unfortunately, right, because of manufacturers and distributors are maybe behind on some of their security and even their technological architecture, that the attackers are knowing that this is potentially low-hanging fruit,
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of attacks are being focused in, the vulnerability, and retail and wholesale vulnerability is what they're talking about there.
Yeah, I wanted to quote something from this. It said the analysis examined 840 large companies with more than $1 billion in annual revenue, 614 retailers, and 226 wholesalers, along with 2,620 critical vendors connected to those firms. The findings show attackers increasingly treat retail and wholesale as a single interconnected target environment linked by common IT service providers, software platforms, professional service firms, and financial vendors. So they're looking at this as an ecosystem in general, right?
Mhm.
Yep. The other piece that is really interesting, by the way, is just as a side note, when you can later today, listen to that recording from the meeting I did yesterday with the managed service provider about cybersecurity for our company, and just some updates and some things that they do and some suggestions. There's like, I thought I had my arms around what we needed to do at LeadSmart in refining some things, but it opened my eyes to some other stuff. So get a listen to what I sent you since you weren't able to make that call. But I think, the unique thing that right now that, we've mostly been thinking about historically has been our company's security system is going to get hacked, right? We're going to get hacked through entrance into our servers, right? By some bad person in Russia or China or wherever it might be. But really what we're seeing, and I don't think this article talked about it, but I'd like to figure out the statistics on it. But really what we're seeing in this setting is not only that, but even less of that now, is they're hacking the individual, for lack of a better example, right? The phishing emails that are coming in, we joke about it on the show here all the time about, you get, requests that look like they're coming from my email address having approved things, and they're coming to the accounting email at LeadSmart, which you see as well. And I guess I'm kind of glad I don't see that email, but it's, what is it? My executive coaching, that,
Yeah.
right. Right. And if you had a new employee, and we've got another new employee starting a week from Monday, and they don't know better. Right. And if you think about really large organizations, it might be hiring 5, 7, 10 new people a week. Right. You have got to get this figured out about how to get people to really understand what is it that they're clicking on, because you could very easily get an email that's coming to you from a person. It appears to be coming from a person in your organization with the right signature line, with the right logo from your company there. And that one click could give them access into your ERP.
Yeah. And even they were talking about here, right? Who you buy your vendors from,
Yep.
right? Because if your vendor security and their cloud security or whatever is weak, right? It opens up the door. Now they can go one to many into the organization. So,
Well, I think
that's
about
things we spend a lot of time on, and certainly with our platform, we have a big advantage, I believe, security wise. But man, if I was a distributor or a manufacturer, I'd be questioning not only my own internal things, but the vendors of what they're doing and how are they.
couldn't agree more with that. It makes me laugh. It was probably a year and a half ago. I watched a company that is in the technology space that we play in and work in for wholesale distributors. They don't really do stuff with manufacturers, but they did a whole press release and said that they were the only company in the wholesale distribution space for technology that had SOC 2 compliance. And I just started laughing to myself, and ended up talking to a couple other executives with some of the ERP companies about this in particular. But not only does our company have SOC 2 type 2 SOC 2 compliance, but SOC 1, SOC 3, and 28 other security certifications and attestations. And so when I saw this gentleman come out and say that he was there, his company was the only one that had it, it was like, well, it's not worth the argument first, right? But it's like, what really hit me is how few people actually even are paying attention and asking their technology vendors about tell me about what your security is. Show me your documentation of SOC 2 compliance, whatever it might, whichever one that might be important at the time, right? As opposed to saying, I mean, uh, I can't tell you, I can't really, I don't want to say I've never, I can't tell you the last time I had a wholesale distributor or a manufacturer that we were talking about using Lead Smart Channel Cloud ask me about security. Now, maybe we get it less because we put it right out in front in our early discussions and discovery and sales calls and so forth about the technology that we have and the security backing that we have behind things. So maybe that's a component of it, but it should be at the core of what everybody is talking about right now in the world that we live in. So
Yeah, because you can buy the greatest, what you believe is the greatest software in the world, but if it ends up costing you a cyber attack or a security breach, right, it doesn't matter how good it is.
yeah.
It's,
Well, and I think it's interesting too, is, as we partner with buying groups like Affiliated Distributors and NetPlus and trade groups like Hardy and ISA and NAW and others, there's so much that happens from recommendations from peers, right? Somebody's in a network group or whatever, or they're going to an event like I'm leaving for this weekend, and in that setting, they get some recommendations. But if somebody were to ask me what they should be asking these people about their recommendations is, what kind of security questions did you ask them before you bought it, right?
yeah.
Ask that guy before you go down a path and talk to your vendor about it. So obviously it's going to have to be.
I think that security is as important or even potentially more important than functionality, right? At this point of the game. So, because you have to have both. To me, it's obviously you need functionality, but the security is as of equal importance. And I think this article that they went through is a good example of that.
It's great. Good. So we slide into our sales and M&A as we kind of start winding down for the day. Anything that hit you in here in our sales and M&A segment?
Not really. Not given that we only have like 2 minutes left. So.
Well, there was one good article here. It's from Sales and Marketing Management.com, and it talks about your best reps are quietly planning their exit. And I think it's interesting. You look at this as I don't know what the statistics are, but it's very hard to both hire and get train good people on, specifically on the sales side of things. So this says that 1 in 4, so 25% of your sales reps are looking for new opportunities at this very moment. I didn't catch where the statistics were for, but I thought it was interesting idea to really be talking about how are we managing our teams, how are we providing for them. How are we even hiring is probably the better start to that as well. So good article there. So good. All right. Well, we have our people and leadership segment with a couple good articles there. Frontline workforce problems that manufacturers have to focus on from IMPO magazine. And then an interesting article from HR Dive about millennial loyalty hinges on career path, which is really interesting. I wish we had time to dive into that today, but we don't. Because we think about how fast millennials are changing jobs, but this ties into the path of clarity for where's the path for them. So, the days we talk about, the days of getting your gold Timex after 35 years of service, we don't see much of that anymore.
It's an interesting one. Millennials and even Gen Z, right, came out into the workforce with a lot of technology skills, but they didn't come into the workforce with AI skills. They're no farther ahead
or interpersonal skills.
Yeah, right. So I think that now there's this real sort of recognition that maybe I've got to not only be reskilling a bit, but I need to be thinking more about a career rather than just bouncing around from one place to another.
Right. Yep. Well, it's good. Good. So anyways, that kind of covers us for this week. Tom, anything big for you for the weekend now that you don't have to fly on Sunday?
No, I just have 2 days to get done what I was going to get in one. So
okay, perfect.
Got some other stuff to do, and it's not like we're not doing the session. The session's just going to be done virtually.
Yes.
There's still preparation and so forth that needs to go on there.
No airplanes, no airports, no hotels for you. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I was supposed to get up at 4 a.m. on Sunday to get to the airport, so I don't mind missing that part of it.
I guess I'm a little fortunate that flight I changed to for tomorrow is a I think, a 10:30 a.m. flight, and it gets me in at, I think, 8:45 or something to DC tomorrow night. So that should be good. But, as I was looking before our show this morning about this storm coming and listening to the radio as well, it's, we'll see. I was joking with Darlene, my wife, yesterday that it's going to be a dud because I made all these adjustments to my plans, right? But it looks like it's, the comment they made on the radio just before we went live was, basically from the middle of the country east, like hunker down.
Well, and think about all the hubs, right, that are in between there, and freezing rain. I mean, freezing rain to me is like a showstopper of,
Yeah.
you can't whatever de-ice fast enough to keep the thing. So you're going to have, it's not just where the snow is, it's all the impact of everything. I mean, most of the hubs in the US are being impacted.
Yep.
So
well, it's interesting. I was at the weekly Bible study we go to last night, and I was talking to a couple of buddies, and they're like, "What are you, nuts? You're flying through Chicago?" And one of them's from Milwaukee, and another one's from New York, and you're crazy to fly with a storm coming. But if you, and I told them, and then they kind of thought backwards, is that storm's coming up from the south, right? So the way my timing is, and I looked at it, is when I connect my flights in Chicago, unless that storm has moved really fast, it won't have started snowing in Chicago yet.
Yeah.
So that's so if the things stay on track the way they are, I should get to DC just fine. And then by Thursday, when I come home Thursday morning, we should be in great shape. So good. Anyways, we'll wish everybody a great weekend, my friend. You as well. I'm sure I'll talk to you over the weekend. I will see you a week from Monday, though, in our offices in Laguna Niguel, and I'll look forward to spending a few days with you and some new hires and the team that we have there. So great week behind us. Good week ahead. We hope that everybody stays safe in this weather issue. If it doesn't impact you, all the better for you as well. So again, we thank you for being with us. We do this every week. I'm Kevin Brown. This is Tom Burton. We love that you're with us. If you'd like to get that newsletter that we were discussing today and you don't, please just send us a note at hello@leadsmarttech.com. We'll get that out to you right away and make sure that you get that every week. And we'll look forward to some guests we have coming up soon. Lastly, again, couldn't do this if we weren't sponsored by the company that Tom and I work for, LeadSmart Technologies. So if your company is in the wholesale distribution world or manufacturing world, and you're looking for a way to accelerate growth in your organization, drive top-line revenue, understand more of what's happening at your customers with your teams in your overall business, we'd love nothing more than to share our solution.
Find untapped potential, hidden margin.
Right. Grow your margin, find untapped potential, and get huge returns on investment on your software investment there. So that's it. So Tom, I wish you well. I'll chat with you soon, and we'll wish everybody a great, safe weekend, and be kind and do good things.
And stay warm.
Stay warm.